Hello everybody, this is Recruit Painting, and in this episode of What I'm Painting, I'm painting the brand new Vogelspinne mech for Konflikt 47 from Warlord Games. Now Warlord Games very kindly gave me a bit of a preview of some of the models that will be coming out in the upcoming release, and I have to say I'm really enjoying Konflikt 47 as a whole at the moment. The creativity that you get with the models themselves, using that kind of like historical colour palette and then a bit of creative freedom was really fun and refreshing, to be perfectly honest, and it definitely ticked a few boxes for me. So you'll notice this pattern, I do use some of the colours that you might see in some of the German armour in bolt action, you know, for the World War II era, but I kind of had a bit of fun with the actual camo pattern itself, actually applying some of my 40k designs that I use for some of the camouflage. So let's get started. After building the model, I primed it with Xandri Dust from Citadel, straight from the can, gave it a good coverage all over, and made sure I didn't miss any areas because I didn't plan on painting over the sprayed primer with the Citadel base colour paint. So this forms the base of my paint scheme, and I think the Xandri Dust works really well as a dunkelgelb stand-in, and you know, one of the three colours in that German tricolour pattern. And here the kit itself comes with multiple turrets, and here I am just showing the auto cannon turret that you can swap out, and again you can make it so that it elevates as well, which is really cool. But in this video I'll be showing you how I painted the gravity weapon. So let's get started. So the first colour that went down after the Xandri Dust Prime was chocolate brown from Vallejo, and with this colour I made large geometric shapes that covered about 40 to 50% of the model. Can't really remember off the top of my head right now, but most of the model either had this or the Xandri Dust coat on it. So I started off by doing the straight lines, keeping my arms steady in that sort of triangle position with my elbows on my knees, and also trying to dodge the camera as well here, but obviously you won't be needing to do that when you're painting your model. So just trying to keep it steady as possible, but it doesn't really matter, you know, you go a little bit wonky here and there, you just straighten it up. And if you go a little bit wobbly, you can add it to part of the lore of your painted miniature. You know, as we know with the World War II era vehicles, that often camo schemes were just painted with large mops, so imperfections kind of add to the character of the miniature really. But yeah, I just aim to try and keep it as straight as possible so that I could weather it a little bit later on. So yeah, do the straight lines first, and then fill in the space between those lines, forming 5, 6 4-sided shapes, and just making it look as cool as I can really. There's a much better view for you here. So as you can see, yep, just find those areas, and just, you know, keeping it as straight as possible and then blocking it out. And this is what it looks like after the first colour in the pattern is down, after 2 thin coats. So it's a little bit messy in areas, not quite straight, but I do tidy that up a little bit later on, after we put the other colours down. And here's how it looks on the legs. So again, it's just randomising it really, and just trying to keep those straight lines. So the next step in the paint scheme was refractive green from Vallejo, and my decision here was that I did try using the refractive green touching the brown, but I didn't like how that looked. So what I ended up doing is kind of leaving like a border between the line of refractive green and the geometric chocolate brown shapes that I'd made. So what I've done here is just as straight as possible, just running parallel to the brown pattern, just a straight line of refractive green, and just, you know, I'll put a line down and then just kind of thicken it up a little bit as I'm kind of going along. So after the refractive green was down, this is how it looks. And personally, doing the two comparisons between having the refractive green touching the brown, I felt this this really looked so much better. So I was really pleased with the outcome of this step. Once I'd tidied up the pattern and I was happy with it, I then went over with a matte varnish. This had two jobs, obviously to protect the paint job so far, and then work as a good base for me to put the transfers on, which was the next step. So I put the matte varnish down and left it to dry. So when it came to the transfers, unfortunately the kit didn't come with any, as the transfers that would be with the official kit were still in production. However, I did have quite a few German transfers lying around, so I was able to kind of go through those and pick a few out that I thought looked really cool. So I went with some red numbering with white borders, and then I had a few crosses that I was able to put on as well. So I thought I'd put one at the front and one at the back, and put the numbers on the turret. Once all the transfers were dry and in place, I then went over the areas where I had placed transfers with a matte varnish, just to kind of blend them all in and take that shine away. Once the varnish had dried, I then got a 50-50 mix of soft tone with Lamy and medium, and covered the whole model with that, just to kind of tone the colours back a little bit. And then it was at this point I realised I should probably took the turret off, because as we all know, when you put a wash on with a turreted model, then the turret ends up sticking. So yeah, try to separate them before you start would be my recommendation. The next step was to use buff from Vallejo, dry brush all over, just to bring out some of those highlights of the model. So yeah, just all over dry brush with a medium to large dry brush, or whatever you've got lying around. And I left the turret on for this step, just so that the dry brushing just blends in well across the whole model, and try to go from panel to panel just to keep it consistent, just so that I know what bits have been dry brushed, so it's nice and clear. And then here's the model after dry brushing. It really starts to kind of come together. And now for the weathering. So for the weathering, I got the old paintbrush holder, put a bit of sponge in there, and just sponged on lightly the base colour of Zandri dust, just all over the model, and then in areas where I thought there would be more wear and tear. It wasn't as obvious. Obviously with World War II tanks, you've got an idea of where crew would be getting in and out, whereas with this it's a little bit different. There are doors obviously, and some turret areas as well, but I kind of went all over and then just focused on those sort of corner areas of the panels as well, and just lightly dabbed the sponge across the entire model. Then, using the same tool and moving on to German grey, I focused on the corner areas to give that impression of the paint being chipped right down to sort of the primer. And that grey, German grey, is a really good colour for that, and I use that on a lot of my armour, including my other armies that I have, like my Soviet army and my British army as well. Now this is just personal preference really, but I like to paint the weapons on my bolt action stuff in black and then dry brush in a metallic colour. I just feel like it looks more authentic, but again, this is just down to personal preference. But I suppose it doesn't really matter in a weird war. You can paint your weapons whatever colour you like, but I've gone for black. So the official artwork for this model, there were lots of glowing areas on the weapon system, and I did debate going down a 3-colour highlight system for that, but opted against it just because there were so many small little areas. So instead I've taken the easy option here and gone for a scheme using contrast colours. So to give the contrast colours a good base colour to work from, I used matte white from Vallejo, and 2 thin layers in those areas that I wanted to glow, including the coils at the front of the weapon, the semicircular dome at the front, the sort of eye sockets that you can see just there by the coils that I'm painting, the coils behind those coils, and then there's sort of vents at the back as well. So I just very carefully painted matte white in those areas to form a base for the contrast colours. And then for that glow effect, I used the most vibrant green contrast paint that I had, which is the striking scorpion green. And all those white areas had 1 layer of striking scorpion. Now the key with contrast paints is to let it fill up the belly of the brush and then kind of paint it on and let the paint kind of do all the hard work, really, getting into the recesses. So just 1 layer of that colour in all those areas that I wanted to have that glow effect. Whilst the contrast paint dried, I then got steel from the army painter to paint the pistons on the legs there, the kind of the exposed pistons that you can see. While steel was on the palette then, it made sense to use it to dry brush the machine gun at the front of the vehicle. And I just made sure that I went all the way around it so that the entire weapon had that metallic effect. Now when building the model, you have a few options just for the different types of weapons that you have. Now this one at the back is the specific back end for the gravity weapon, and so to differentiate it, I've got the Balthasar gold here to give that brass effect on just 2 little coils that you can see on the side there. So just very carefully gave those 2 thin layers. And you can do this step earlier in the painting process. However, I like to do all of my metallics at the same step, so just so that I don't contaminate the water. So the next step was to weather those areas where there might be a bit of build-up of dirt, you know, around panel edges and rivets and that sort of thing. So I used a mix of strong tone, 2-part strong tone to 1-part Lamy and medium. And again, just where there might be a bit of build-up of dirt. I also added it to the rivets as well, just to kind of give it that weathered, dirtier kind of look. Now there is actually quite a large visor in the turret, and it seemed a bit silly just to kind of leave it blank, so I decided to give it a glass effect. So I've used Cantor Blue base here, base colour on that area, so you can just see it there just to the left of the weapon. So it's a very small area, so just with a detail brush, I just went in there with two thin coats of Cantor Blue. Then with a 50-50 mix of rust grey and Cantor Blue, I found a little highlighted area in the top left corner, and went over to the middle just a tiny bit, to the right, and then again just a little bit towards the bottom, just to give it that appearance of reflection. And to paint this layer I used an insane detail brush from the Army Painter, but you can use any finer detail brush that you might have. And the next step was a layer of rust grey, pure rust grey, within what we have just painted. So keeping the shape, but just a little bit smaller. Then on the opposite side of the main area that we're highlighting, I just put a little dot, which we'll fill in with another colour in a moment. And that other colour is white from Vallejo, so I just put a little dot in those highlighted areas. And the final step was to use Baneblade Brown just to tie the model in with the environment that it'll be walking around in. So I dry brushed this around the feet and the bottom of the chassis as well, just to give that impression of dried in dirt. And I think Baneblade Brown works really well for this, and I use it for all of my miniatures. And this is the final result. I'm really happy with how this model turned out. The whole process from start to finish has been great. The kit itself, the build process, the way that it's laid out on the sprue, it all works so well. And the fact that the kit comes with the multiple turrets and you can swap those turrets out. Yes, the rear end of the miniature doesn't reflect the weapon if you do swap the turret out, but if you're not bothered about that, it doesn't really matter too much. The one on the moment is for the gravity weapon that you can see there at the top. But all in all, it's a really great kit, and being able to use that World War II colour palette, but paint in a different way, is just really refreshing. And it's why I got into wargaming as a kid. You know, I collected Imperial Guard back in the early 2000s just because I loved watching those war movies, those World War II war movies. And it just felt like that whole process was coming back to me again, you know, looking at this miniature and being able to paint it in a way that I thought was cool using that World War II colour palette was really great fun. And that's why I'm really getting excited about getting into Konflikt 47. So I'm really thankful for Warlord Games for sending me this kit out a little bit early to paint and build. And I'm really looking forward to being able to paint and build more in the future. So if you've liked this video, do please like and subscribe. It really means a lot, and in the comments let me know what you think. Are you thinking about getting into Konflikt 47? Are you enjoying seeing Konflikt 47 content? If you are, let me know. See you in the next one.